Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Mullinger Meets Canadians. My very special guest on this very special episode is the director of the film that I believe to be the greatest movie ever made. I'm of course talking about The Toxic Avenger. I'm a big collector of Toxic Avenger memorabilia. I have Toxic Avenger toys, and very shortly in the real intro, edited by Reese Waters, nice work Reese, the legend at Podstarter, who is the man behind all of this, you will see some of that collection. But this is a kind of a pre-intro, if you will, to just say, I hope you enjoy this special episode. Lloyd is of course famously a New Yorker, so is actually the first non-Canadian to ever appear on Mullinger Meets Canadians, but it felt fitting and right to do this because my first ever foray into magazine making was actually this fanzine, age 12, a fanzine titled The Wild Wild World of Troma Inc., devoted to Troma and Lloyd's work. And this is my first ever interview sheet that I ever typed up. Interviewed probably thousands of people since then, but this was the very, very first interview I ever did with Lloyd at the Romeo and Juliet premiere in London. He signed it, James, you are traumatic, Lloyd Kaufman. And without Lloyd, I probably wouldn't do any of what I do now, which is just talk to people that I really admire and write about it or upload it to the pod. So anyway, here's the real intro coming up. I just wanted to say, I hope you enjoy it. As well as being the first ever non-Canadian to ever appear on Mullinger Meets Canadians, this is also the first time we've done a video version of it. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, we'll do more of them. Thanks very much. Cheers, bye.
Greetings from Tromaville.
In this very special episode, I'm speaking with one of my all-time heroes, director and Troma Movie Studio founder, Lloyd Kaufman. Now, as any movie fan will know, Lloyd Kaufman is the director of the Toxic Avenger films and is famously a proud New Yorker. So why is he on Mullinger Meets Canadians, you ask? Simple, because without Lloyd Kaufman, this podcast, and indeed my magazine business and my comedy career, would not exist. Let me explain. When I was a shy, insecure, depressed, bullied little boy growing up in a small town in England, my passion and my escapism was Troma movies. I was obsessed with the films that Lloyd made at Troma. B-movies with titles like Nymphoid Barbarian in Dinosaur Hell, Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town, and, one of my favourites, Class of Newcomb High. I was a quiet kid, alone in my bedroom, aspiring to become a writer. So age 12, I made my own fanzine, devoted to Troma movies. I typed the little film reviews up, and I cut out photos and I stuck them in, and I walked to my local library in Maidenhead and photocopied the pages and stapled them together and advertised my Troma fanzine in horror magazines like The Dark Side, and I sold copies via mail order for £1.75 each. It was my first foray into magazine making. A wonderful teacher at my school saw the fanzine and suggested that I write to Lloyd Kaufman and ask him for an interview. I thought that seems very unlikely, but I did so anyway, not expecting to hear back. But Lloyd replied and invited me to do the interview with him in person at the premiere of their new movie Romeo and Juliet, famously co-written by James Gunn of Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad fame. In the first Guardians film, Lloyd actually makes a cameo. Anyway, I could not believe that my hero, the king of all B-movies, had time for me, just a small kid from a small town. I couldn't believe he was kind to me. I couldn't believe that he encouraged me. So my dad took me on the train to London's West End, and we filmed the interview in the lobby of the Prince Charles Cinema. I was spectacularly nervous interviewing my hero, but Lloyd was so kind and so lovely that I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Interview people I admire and write about them. The dream. And I can honestly say that if Lloyd Kaufman had not been so gracious, I would not be doing any of what I do now. And now, aged 43, I'm still obsessed with his films. I still spend all my spare time watching them and collecting posters and stills for his movies. So 25 years after that first interview, I'm interviewing him again from his home in New York. And Lloyd is still making movies now, most recently Return to Newcomb High Volume 2 and Shakespeare's Shitstorm. Born in New York in 1945 to a Jewish family, Lloyd has done it all. He graduated from Yale University with the class of 1968, where he majored in Chinese studies. His fellow Yale classmates included Oliver Stone and George W. Bush. In 1974, Lloyd and business partner Michael Hertz founded Troma Entertainment and began producing and distributing independent action and comedy films. In order to pay the bills, Lloyd actually did some freelance work for Hollywood productions such as Saturday Night Fever and Rocky, which was actually edited on Troma's flatbed machines. Kevin Costner's first films were Troma films. James Gunn began his career with Troma. Trey Parker and Matt Stone made Cannibal the Musical for Troma before creating South Park, and many of today's stars, directors and writers began their careers at Troma, and many more have grown up with them. Eli Roth, Oliver Stone also worked for Troma. The first efforts of Dustin Hoffman, Samuel L. Jackson and Robert De Niro can be found in Troma's valuable film library. Troma continues to be a haven for independent directors and young talent during an era of corporate takeovers. Troma Entertainment is the longest-running independent movie studio in North America, but for many years they were not getting the respect they deserve. But that is starting to change. Quite recently, the Museum of Modern Art selected Return to Newcomb High Volume 1 as part of its prestigious Contenders series, a collection of influential, innovative films that are believed will stand the test of time. There is no one quite like Lloyd Kaufman. So without further ado, let me introduce you, my dear listeners, to my hero, Lloyd Kaufman, the first and only non-Canadian to appear on Mullinger Meets Canadians. Lloyd Kaufman, my friend, how are you?
It's terrific. I have one regret that the great James Mullinger was not in my latest film, #Shakespeare's Shitstorm, because his personality sums up everything the bard wanted.
That's beautiful. Well, needless to say, I too am heartbroken about that. What can you
Damn it. What was I thinking? I should have contacted. Well, why didn't you contact me? God damn it. I'm too old to even remember who you are.
I know. Well, tell me about it. This is life. And the world has gone mad, obviously, since Shakespeare's Shitstorm was filmed. But what can you tell me about the making of the film and also how the distribution has changed in the last year?
Well, this is my 50th year of making movies, Troma's 47th year, and #Shakespeare's Shitstorm could very well be my last movie. It's based on The Tempest by one William Shakespeare, who, for those of you who don't know that, he wrote the amazing bestseller 101 Money-Making Screenplay Ideas, otherwise known as Hamlet. And The Tempest was always my favorite play. When James Gunn and I were working on Romeo and Juliet, I had wanted to do The Tempest, but I was not old enough. And now that I'm of Prospero's age and I can really feel the themes of The Tempest, I played the part of Prospero, encouraged, oddly enough, by Oscar-winning actor.
Amazing.
So anyway,
which one?
I sure am boring, aren't I? John Voight. I offered the part. I offered the part of Prospero to John Voight, who's an admirer of Troma, and he told me I better play the part. He said I should play the part.
That's amazing.
Why not? I feel Prospero, right? I'm old. I'm losing power. I took a lot of the Tempest is the druggiest of Shakespeare. I certainly qualify in the drug department. And magic, he's all about magic, which in a way I do with all the movies I've made. So I think that The Tempest was the perfect possible swan song for the career of Uncle Lloydie.
Well, but I hope it isn't a swan song. I hope there's. Well, I hope there's many more films.
Well, I hope so too, but I don't have I'm kind of looking around for a script. If you or anybody has a one-of-a-kind script that might make the world a better place, it can be any genre, James. I'll do rom-com, children's film, anything that's one of a kind and might get people thinking just a little bit. Like Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. It touched all the points that Fast Food Nation touched, but it was aimed at people who maybe might actually be influenced. The Fast Food Nation was all aimed at the people already convinced. whereas Poultrygeist was aimed at a lot of dumb, stupid North American people who were unaware of the genocide of the Indians. You call them first citizens or something. And of course, the
First
savagery
Nations, yeah.
of First Nations. I'm sorry, and of course the
Mm,
savagery,
mm.
savagery of farm factory farming, and the awful influence that fast food has had on the United States of America. We have 40% obesity, and I haven't heard Mr. Biden saying one word about it because he doesn't want to lose the fat vote. There's all such full of bullshit. Although I have to say, Biden is doing a infinitely better job than I imagined. I had created a hashtag called settle for Biden, but I putting that away because he is doing some great things. He may be he may end up like one of the great presidents. Who knows? And he's older than I
That's
am, so
amazing to hear because
I can laugh at him.
but
Sorry.
don't you think it's quite a wonderful thing? No, sorry, I was going to say it's quite a wonderful thing to hear someone when it comes to politics admitting that someone has impressed them. Because generally, the problem in politics and in life is that people will never admit when they've been wrong about something. And yeah, if you think a politician's going to be bad, but they do a good job, that should be recognised.
I agree, and I put it up on my social, my Twitter, and my Instagram, and a huge response. People seem to be happy with that. I think we have a big problem in our country, in that there is the loss of nuance. Even at
Mm.
Yale University, my alma mater, there are situations which inspired me really to keep going with hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm, because one of the themes of hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorms is the awful Twitter hate, where you have these third rate bloggers making their bones on tearing down other people. And they have absolutely no talent, they have no writing ability, they have nothing. And it happened to James Gunn. It happened to I've been canceled. Again, I only have a small following, but so it doesn't matter. Canceling me actually helps me probably, but it gives me more
But
publicity. But the
that's an
point,
interest. Yeah.
YouTube even canceled our channel
Mm.
until the fans erupted, and then
Right.
YouTube, in typical hypocritical fashion, restored the channel. Ridiculous. It's a horrible world. We
Yeah.
lack nuance. Did you learn about when you went to school, James? You're very young. Did you have? Of course, you're in a country that gives you national health care. Did you have debating class at school when you were in high school?
Yeah, I mean, we had that at school, and as you say, I mean, there was definitely nuance, and I mean, I obviously grew up in an era of Monty Python when I was very young, and then when I was 10, I discovered Troma, and so I mean, for me, nuance was everything. But
Yeah.
you must have seen in 5 decades. I mean, you've seen it all in film, and you were told 30 years ago that your films were inappropriate. You're still doing controversial things. I mean, does controversy? What does it actually mean to you, really?
Well, the people who actually take the trouble to look at our movies, they never go away disappointed.
Right.
You know, they may say they had to turn away because there were scenes that were too graphic, or maybe they don't like lesbians, or maybe head squashing, which is basically cartoon Daffy Duck scene. They don't like that.
Mm.
But nobody who has worked for us, worked on our films, or even watched one of the movies that are in-house productions has ever complained. It's the people who haven't seen our
Mm.
movies. They're the ones who complain,
Mm.
and the stupid critics don't go. They don't pay attention to us because they've all been fired. There are no newspapers left. There's the New York Times, which has basically eliminated all the real film critics. They got one or two who write film reviews, and then the others are all independent contractors like YouTube drivers. They don't
Yeah.
get health care. They don't, and we only and you know so. And then everybody else is on the mainstream media. Unfortunately, is either owned by telephone companies like AT&T, or in your
Mhm.
country, your government has too much control. But in the United States, it's all
Yeah.
about a cartel, a media cartel of 5 or 6 telephone companies. And unless you're
Mm.
unless you're willing to go out to Los Angeles and suck dick, you can't succeed. It's impossible. And you also need
But
some
it's true.
talent.
But
And I'm not quite sure in that department
that's
if I
true.
qualify.
Well, as your number one fan, you definitely do. And I mean, what I find fascinating
No,
is that
thank
in the
you.
5 decades you've spent, doing what you do. I mean, there has been lots of critical acclaim. I mean, I have in my collection lots of glowing reviews for
Wow.
Troma
Woo.
movies over the years.
Whoa.
All of
Okay.
these glowing reviews, glowing
Thank you.
reviews.
Whoa,
No,
James, my
oh, it
God.
it
Thank
keeps
you.
coming.
Thank you very much.
All of these amazing reviews for Troma films, but you've seen it all, you've experienced it all. You were the first to be doing what you do, but over the years there has been recognition. There's been the American Film Institute and other museums and so forth recognizing Troma. I mean,
That is true.
how do you feel now? Do you feel like Troma has got the recognition it deserves from fans and people? And if not, do you think that will come?
Well, the only reason that we are here after 50 years, or 47 for Troma, is you, James, the fans. We are Troma Entertainment Incorporated is fan fueled.
Yeah.
Fans book our theaters, which you did, and
Yeah.
many of you do that. They act and shoot our films. They help. We got about 10% of the hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm budget from a fan without any, just as patrons of the art. The Cinémathèque Française has done 3 Lloyd Kaufman seasons. The Russian Film Institute, Japanese Keio University, Yale University. We've had recognition everywhere except in my own city and country, really. Certain archival and
Right.
certain places that nobody really goes to, like the Museum of Modern Art, they recognize me, but who knows about that? Everybody, right?
Yeah.
Zilla versus Kong is much more important. And it was great. It was
Right.
great. I have to
And
say, it was a wonderful, wonderful movie. But mainstream, the big difference.
it what there is, and you're right. It was a fun movie. I took my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old. They both enjoyed it, but ultimately, it's a Troma movie. It's a Troma movie, just done without as much heart and passion as a Troma movie. And this is what I find so fascinating when I see the world we're in now and the amount of money that gets blown on a movie like that. Because I get far more pleasure out of Nymphoid Barbarian in Dinosaur Hell than and I loved Godzilla versus Kong, but I would much
Me
rather
too. Yeah. Yeah.
be watching one of your movies, and as would my children. And this is something that I hope continues throughout. The Mullinger legacy is the children
Well,
always.
good. Well, thank you. And you're correct. Unfortunately, at least in my country, the educational system has been totally eviscerated, and people basically children are exposed to drug commercials every 10 minutes
Yeah.
on morning those stupid chat shows. So 3 generations of American children have been conditioned to taking pills. So now last year we had 80,000 opioid deaths in this country and probably 500,000 addictions, which is kind of a mini pandemic. Except we have it every year, and nobody cares. It's they'll take me off YouTube, but they won't take the advertising for whoever makes the opioid. Well, now they got the opioids, but there's a lot of other bad stuff that nobody, it's double standard. That's the problem. You don't know. There's no real rules. The algorithms that the big boys put out, they're against. They want to cut you out. Not they're perfectly willing to let Shaw Communications or CNN show people cutting other people's heads off in Syria, but they're not going to allow James Mullinger to say fuck, right?
I know. It's true. It's true. My stand-up special actually got censored from Amazon Prime. And what's so wrong about everything that you're describing is the only reason that I never tried heroin growing up was because I saw your film, Story of a Junkie. And meanwhile, people are saying Troma's a bad influence, and yet I'm definitely susceptible to addiction, and I never tried heroin because I saw Story of a Junkie.
I still want to try heroin, and I've been bugging my wife that I'm on my deathbed, please get me heroin because I hear it is absolutely amazing.
Right.
But I'm scared. I'm scared to try it.
I'm exactly the same. It must be a lot of fun. It must be a lot of fun. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. But like you say, I'm scared of it.
Me too. But I'll tell you, you and I should clear a week. We should go to Peru together and take the ayacathwa, the herb that the Indians take down there, because I hear the New Yorker wrote a great piece on it, and it totally made me want to try it. Have you heard of ayacathwa? It's like Hiawatha, but it's ayacathwa or something. Sounds great.
I read about it as well. Yeah, it does sound. It sounds like a lot of fun. And if there's anyone I want to do it with, it's you.
Yeah, it would be great. And I'm told, actually, one of my daughters. I shouldn't be talking about it, but nobody's going to watch this anyway. So I'm sorry. That's why I've been censored. That's why I've been been canceled. But apparently, according to the New Yorker, some people will throw up, which is kind of Troma-ish. Also, if we both throw up, it would be kind of exciting. That alone, throw up with James Mullinger, I would love. That'd be great.
It's been my dream to be in a Troma movie my whole life, and that would be the moment.
Well, if you guys or your fans could find a really interesting script, I can spend up to $500,000 US. And I'm sure we could probably get other contributions a little bit. Wow. So you figure $500,000, I could definitely come up with it if the script was, up to the level of hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm. And by the way, the guy who wrote it, other than Shakespeare and Gabe Friedman and I, Brandon Bassam. He's the next James Gunn or James Mullinger or Eli Roth to come out of descend from the loins of Troma. He's really talented, and I just financed his new movie called Slashing the Final Beginning, and it's going to have its first theater in Los Angeles, Lemley Cinemas, starting April 30th, April 29th. There's going to be a big opening, and then I won't be there because I'm ill. But they've got a big party. The director, Brandon Bassam, and the stars will be there. So Troma continues to find really, really talented people. So maybe there's another James Gunn or Brandon, whatever his name is, out there. Sorry.
Well, we'll get the word out. I mean,
thank you.
That was going to. Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions was how Troma is getting the recognition by various factions, but one of the things that you've been passionate about, obviously since the beginning, is celebrating and nurturing young talent. And I mean, to anyone watching that doesn't know this, Lloyd and I, we first met in 1996 at the Romeo and Juliet premiere in London. I was producing a fanzine called The Wild Wild World of Troma Inc. And I wrote to you for a phone interview, and you said, I'm going to be in London. And this is the original question sheet from when I was 18 years old, which you kindly signed. It says, James, you are traumatic, Lloyd Kaufman. And maybe in a bit, I'll ask you some of the same questions.
Will you send it to me? Because the American Heritage at the University of Oklahoma has my archives right next door to Stan Lee's archives. Wow. And I'll send it. Every so often we put stuff in a box and send it out there.
Amazing.
So it'd be nice to have that. It'd be wonderful to have that.
Oh, I'll definitely send you this. And it was, I couldn't believe as a kind of 18-year-old that my hero was saying, yes, we could meet. I was so nervous. It was my first time interviewing someone. And that was, and now I was 18, I'm now 43. I don't think any of what I've done since I would have done were it not for your kindness. and I think the point at which my life.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, honestly. And I think the point at which my life changed was when I saw this, which was the Troma special of The Dark Side magazine in April '92. And this was, at this point, I had seen The Toxic Avenger. So I'd rented it from the video shop. And as you know, in England, this is the artwork that was in England,
Right. Oh, wow.
beautifully embossed. And then
Amazing.
I couldn't believe that there was other movies made by the great filmmakers. Now, of course, now years later, I have almost every single different release
Oh my gosh.
of
Wow.
the Toxic.
Whoa. Whoa. That's a museum.
They
Unbelievable. Well, thank you.
oh, they keep going. I'm not even halfway through yet. I should point out. I've of course got these.
Incredible. Incredible.
Obviously these.
Well, thank you so much.
And so for me, picking up that copy of The Dark Side and discovering
This is better. This is better than an Oscar, James. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. Holy cow. It's terrific. Well, it shows you we've done something in 47
oh
years.
well, it's
Even
definitely
VHS. Wow.
oh yeah.
Incredible.
And
Wow.
anyway, sorry, I know it's a lot. I mean,
Thank you so much. That's great.
I have
thank you.
a similar collection for Surf Nazis and for Monster in the Closet as well. Of course, I own all the films in some format.
Wow.
but-
Wow. Well,
But
thank you
do
so
you
much.
remember this article, and did you realize the kind of impression it would have on people?
No, not. But the guy who edited that magazine, I became very friendly with him I haven't seen him for probably 10 years, but we used to go out together and have a good time in London. Speaking of which, I don't know if you were able to see the Toxic Avenger musical on the West
No.
End when it played, but it was quite successful. And they took something that was spurned by most of the world and made it into a lovely, funny as hell musical that an old woman and a young child could go to see. David Bryan of
Right.
Bon Jovi. Oh, look who's here! Come and say hello to James Mullinger. You may have met him in London a long time ago. Come as you are. It's great. This is the commissioner, my wife, who you may have met back in when we were in London.
Recognize me.
Remember?
I recognize you perfectly. It's lovely to see you. Virtual hugs.
You probably can't.
She I don't go out, but she jogs and spends about 3 hours working out. Otherwise, we're in lockdown. But you mentioned you mentioned Monty Python. Hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm is dedicated to Terry Jones and Stan Lee
Nice.
and John G. Avildsen, who directed Rocky and was kind of a big influence on me, as well as also
And-
four of them. My stepmother too, Sigrun Kaufman, who was 30 years younger than my father and took very good care of him for 30 years, for 25 years that they were married.
Wow.
So
And
anyway,
John G.
Terry
Avildsen also
Jones,
directed
great
Cry
friend.
Uncle, of course.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Troma,
and John
it's
G.
on our.
Yes, Cry Uncle,
It's on
yes.
yeah, it's on Troma now. We got to mention Troma now. If you could talk a little bit about
Troma
that,
Now.
James.
Of course. Well, and this is the important point. And I think this is one of the, I mean, I am, as you can tell, someone who's obsessed with physical media. However, the new world is the new world. Troma has been shut out by the mainstream, but you created Troma Now so that fans could access all of your amazing content all of the time. And it's funny because I own all of your movies on VHS, Blu-ray, DVD, Laserdisc, you name it. But when
thank
I'm
you.
on the road, I'm not allowed to carry a VHS player around with me. So Troma
Oh,
Now is where I go. Can you tell me a bit about how Troma has stayed with the times and evolved in this way, and indeed created Troma Now and ways for fans to access your content?
Well, Troma Now, just for you people listening, is the Troma platform. It's Netflix, but it's Troma. There's about 1,000 movies, shorts, music videos, Tromette collectibles, and personal statements, as well as 5 or 6 feature-length documentaries about the making of Troma classics that we made ourselves. So it's the real truth. Poultry Guys, for example, has an hour and a half a documentary called Poultry in Motion. Truth is Stranger Than Chicken, which is both hilarious, sad, funny, and it's worth a year of your best film school. So that's what
Yeah, I
Troma now
loved it.
is.
I
But
loved it.
a big secret is the fans. The fans make us look like we're a big corporation because they support us in every way. And maybe each month I think we have at least 1 million fans who check in on either my fan site
Yeah.
or Troma's social or my Instagram, whatever. So there's a core group deep in the underground who support each other, and we wouldn't be here without. And you're look at you, my God, thank you. And that's why the Oscar, which
No.
you can buy an Oscar. It's in the real world. If there is a God, he's looking down. He said, "Wait a minute, Oscar? These 5 movies they nominated this year is Oscar worthy? That must mean the Oscar is like bullshit." And look at this man, giving James Mullinger. His heart and soul and brain are that's better than an Oscar. They love Troma, and that's really the secret is the fans. And I think that we have painted ourselves into a corner, which is normally not smart, but we've skidded by. I've been able to make movies for about $500,000. The lowest has been about 350,000. So that's a small budget compared to the remake of The Toxic Avenger, which is apparently 22 million. I hope I'm allowed to say that. Well,
And
you may have gotten an exclusive bit of information there.
That is
That's
very
exclusive.
good to know. There's yeah, I like it. And that's a very good question. So the Toxic Avenger, can you tell me a bit about how you came up with the idea, how it evolved, and did you anticipate that it would resonate with so many people? And indeed, not only would people still be talking about it now, but there would be a multi-million-dollar Hollywood version being made of it.
Every time Michael Hers, my partner, who shuns the limelight, who is much better looking, much more intelligent, and much more patient than I, excuse me, he and I have had freedom for all these years. And now, what was the question? I'm sky high on cat tranquilizer.
That's okay. A good bit of ketamine never hurt anyone.
When the commissioner and I were first married, we used to go camping a lot. Lake George, up St. Lawrence, up near in Canada too. And we would notice there's trash everywhere, no matter where we went. No matter how far we into the woods, there was McDonald's crap and God knows. And those beer tabs, they used to throw them away. When you opened a beer, you threw them away. And everywhere. And the frogs were getting their feet stuck in them and fish were eating them. And I got interested in the environment. And that was what led to Toxic Avenger. Also, we had discovered a vein of success with our first comedy, a raunchy comedy, 1975, I think, called Squeeze Play, which was based on the women's rights movement and women's liberation movement. But yet it was a raunchy comedy, and it came out ahead of Porky's, which was directed by a Canadian, as you know, the late Bob, yeah, he went to Yale also, and he studied Squeeze Play. He came to our offices in New York before he made that movie, and he interviewed us. And unfortunately, made a film that was 10 times better than Squeeze Play, and that put us that movie started to influence, I think, the major studios who started cheating and making Troma movies, except they were using good scripts and good acting. So we had to stop we made about 6 of them, which were very good. They all had political issues. They were all really interesting, and they all did well until the first Turn On, which is the funniest of them.
Yeah,
that's the one that Mr. Hers decided Madonna wasn't good enough for him. So he picked a woman who later turned up in with her legs spread in Cherry magazine. Thank you, Mr. Hers. But
he made the right choice.
I'll turn you gay yet, buddy. But Vincent D'Onofrio's first movie is
Yeah.
First Turn On, and it's a
Hmm.
hell of a funny. It's hilarious, and Michael Hers is that's it. The closest I think that's the most Michael Hers influenced movie. We directed it together, but he was the commanding officer for sure. But the studios caught on, and we had to move elsewhere. So we decided we saw Variety, which is an in-house rag that the cartel uses to promote itself. It's basically a house organ for Sony and Comcast and AT&T and T and Shaw whoever,
Yeah.
National Film Board. But they had a big headline that horror films were no longer commercial. And Michael, maybe it wasn't Variety, it may have been the other one. Uh, but Michael Hurst saw the headline, so he said, "That's what we'll do." Very often, when the so-called experts, the overpaid experts, say something, you do the opposite, and you do pretty well. I knew nothing about
Yeah.
horror. I mean, I'd seen Frankenstein and some classics.
Mhm.
But so then, because I like satire and I want to create a something that people think about a little bit, I got onto the environment, and
Mhm.
and also I had worked on Rocky, so there's a little Rocky there.
Right.
But basically, it took a long time to figure out where I was going with that movie, and we indeed, I think we got
Yeah.
it right. The original Toxic Avenger. Citizen Toxie is also
It's
very good. I think Citizen Toxie is, in fact, better than the Toxic Avenger, but most people stick with the original
wow.
Toxie. The
They do.
I
I
made
mean,
some.
could you have imagined back then? Oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead. I'm
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead. I started. Oh, well, I was just going to say, could you have imagined back then that it would still be resonating with fans today, and also with new audiences today?
I swear, I think all the movies that Michael Hers and I have made are great for a mass audience. The problem
Yeah.
is nobody knows about them. We haven't really, we haven't had whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And also, John G. Avildsen told me that I shouldn't even try to do something out in the mainstream because I had a reputation for fighting, whatever, and he was a fighter. So I think you need to get in that world somehow. The gatekeepers are just, and now it's worse because when I started making movies, there were maybe 30 American Tromas going.
Mm,
AIP and Dimension, and there were tons of these little studios
mm,
that were making. Most of them were making garbage. AIP did very good stuff. They discovered, they produced Roger Corman, who was a buddy of
mm.
ours, and a big influence on me, and a
Yeah.
great guy.
I
Yeah.
mean,
So that's basically the issue: the environment, comedy, satire, and trying to just make something that's entertaining but yet slightly didactic. And
mhm,
when Toxic Avenger came out, of course, not one theater would play it, and there wasn't even VHS in those days when it first came
mm,
out.
yeah.
Then we played it at one theater. We got a theater in Greenwich Village, New York. And it was called the Bleecker Street Cinema. And the lady who owned it,
Oh, yeah.
who was I met her on when I hung around the Warhol studio, Jackie Raynal, and
Mhm.
she booked it. She got
Oh, yeah.
it. She understood Toxic Avenger was a satire. It wasn't a horror movie. It was a Cuisinart of
Mhm.
genres: satire, slapstick,
Yeah.
slasher, political, social. All these
Mm,
things, action, all mixed together, and a hideously deformed
all
creature
of
of
it.
superhuman size and strength. And she booked it, and it was supposed to be, like a weekend, and it went for almost a year. In fact, the day it opened, there was a line. The public knew it. The public figured it out
Wow.
without even even. And then the lead. There we got lucky because the lead critic for the New York Times, Vincent Canby,
Mm,
chose that movie to review on a Friday, which is the big reviewing day. Instead
mhm.
of reviewing the mainstream baby food, he, for some reason, in
Mm,
1983 or four or five, chose Toxic Avenger and gave it a really good review.
mm,
And suddenly, from then, we
yeah.
got 2,000 screens. So the lesson is that the people in the movie industry, or the gatekeepers, they are gutless. They're chicken. They're chicken. But I think,
Yeah.
after the bus hits me and my own head is crushed by the wheel of a vehicle, I think the Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, Romeo and Juliet, they will keep going. Even now, we're getting theatrical bookings from the small number of
Yeah.
independent theaters who love movies. There aren't many of them, but we do
Right.
keep
Well,
getting.
when yeah, I
Please.
mean, when we showed Return to Newcomb High 2 here in St. John, there was more people in that room than there is in any cinema screening that I've seen since I've lived here. So, as you say, I mean,
Wow,
the fans
thank
do
you.
come out. I mean, I think no, well, thank you, and I think a huge part of it is what people don't realize is that people love Truman movies because of the heart and the passion and the warmth in them. And do you not think that part of what brings out that passion and warmth in yourself and the crew is the kind of the fact that you are working with less budget, so you're forced to put more effort in, so to speak, because of the lack of budget?
I think you're right. Well, also, when I was at Yale, I happened to be placed in a very small bedroom with a movie nut, and he ran the Yale Film Society. In the office of the Yale Film Society was a stack of cahiers de cinema. And being a proud member of the bourgeoisie class, I speak fluent French. And so I started reading them, and I came across articles by Godard and Chabrol and the guy who just, Tavernier, who I interviewed for one of my books. And they propounded the auteur theory of cinema, which is that the director should be the author of the film, and the film should reflect the heart and soul and brain of the director. And I bought into that. Took acid one night and bought into it, and decided I would stay in New York and devote my life to the underground cinema. Thank you,
Well,
LSD,
thank
for
God you
ruining my
did,
life.
because
Well, you're a good guy. You're a
well,
very good guy.
well, I would like to thank LSD, and I think what's interesting is that people, I don't. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there is definitely evidence that the industry has deliberately pushed you out. And you mentioned, variety and all of these things. And a perfect example of this, and the evidence I have, is that not many people know that you, Lloyd Kaufman, and Troma were the people who brought My Neighbor Totoro to America. And when you did so, the reviews for it were terrible and racist and comparing it to Disney negatively. And it was only later that it was then held up as one of the greatest animated films of all time. How did you discover the film, and how did you feel about that kind of injustice of the fact that you brought it to America and North America, but never got the credit for it?
It gets worse, actually. We lost a lot of money on that movie because we made 35 prints and we had to distribute it theatrically and spend a lot of money. We did get a good VHS distribution deal from Fox, but the real profit comes from the television,
Mm,
because you have to spend money on all the other mediums. TV, you only give them a master.
right.
And Disney, after Totoro came out and did okay, although we were still we still didn't have a profit. Uh, Disney put out a press release announcing they had bought the entire library of Gilby, whatever it is, of Hayao Miyazaki's
Yeah.
studio, and
Yeah.
they used the My Neighbor Totoro ad, the little cat thing, in the press releases. So every newspaper announced it with the Totoro thing. So when it came time for us to go
Mm,
to try to syndicate it for television, all we got were rejections because everybody said, "Oh no, Disney has this film. You don't have." And our contract only had another year to run, so we were screwed, and we
my
we
goodness.
didn't have enough money. If we would have sued Disney, we couldn't really. It was impossible to sue them.
Mm.
Really, we wrote them a lawyer's letter to which they didn't respond, and they would have taken 5 or 6 years, and we would have gotten nowhere. So another slap in the face. But it really was a very bad setback. Yeah, I agree. And here it is. How many years later? Some 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 young guy. That's not a Chinese dish. Some young guy at Variety discovered this and put it in an article, or was it Variety? I don't know. Somebody begrudgingly, probably, or maybe some of the young people at these mainstream firms are fans of Troma, and like you, and
Yeah.
maybe he or she, it may have been a woman. I apologize if that was a woman who wrote the article. Or if it's LBGTX with a question mark. If any of you wrote it, I apologize, and I thank you very much for being a fan. And the truth will out. In fact, hashtag truth and love. Hashtag truth and love for young people. I think that's where it's all at, and I think that's enough to get you through life, quite frankly.
I agree. And so, I mean, you've been through these challenges. You've seen highs and lows. But obviously, right now, hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm. Very exciting for fans. How can people watch it, and when can they watch it? And what is the plan during a global pandemic for getting the film to the people?
Well, right now it's not making the festival circuit, having been turned down by almost all of the first, film festivals. Very proud, of course. No, no, that's a joke. It has been turned down. But Fantasia in Quebec, Montreal. Where are they located? Montreal.
Montreal. Yeah.
Fantasia did a great opening there, and like you, they had a huge response. It was online, obviously. They had a huge response, and from there, some of the other festivals have caught on, and so hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm is going through the festivals, and we don't know. There'll be about 200 theaters in which, if I direct a movie, they'll play it for maybe a week, maybe a weekend, maybe one day, one night. But we make our movies for the big screen, as you know, and there's lots of detail that you will see on the big screen that you won't see. I have a lot of what we call shtick and going on in the background, sometimes to the chagrin of the lead actors in the movie, because I spend more time on the goofy stuff in the background than on their performance. So we, Michael and I, prefer. We want to please those who wish to enjoy the communal experience of a theatrical motion picture. So we'll try to get it into as many theaters as possible, and then have a big premiere on Troma Now and Blu-ray. And that's way in the distance. We also have
Beautiful.
a little problem. We have another little problem with the, how do you say it? Money, money. I want that money, as Cyril Mostel says in The Producers. I want that money.
Um, well, I mean, the important thing with you paying attention to all of those details is, of course, that it means that the fans like myself want to watch the movies over and over and over again. And of course, in theory, we should be paying for every view, which is why when I get a Troma movie, I buy it 50 times on every different format so that I'm
Oh,
paying for every time I'm going to watch it.
well, that's probably why we're still here. I had no idea. I was wondering who that was.
um, and it's lovely to hear that it was a Canadian film festival that got hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm out there. Um,
Indeed, indeed.
and I cannot wait to see it. Obviously, right now, I realize that the world is on hold. But what are your plans for next steps? I'm hoping that this isn't your swan song, that you do have another film in mind, and clearly you're open to ideas from everywhere. Do you have any ideas now, or you're just waiting to see what comes along?
You see, I'm blowing my nose, James. That's how real I am. You see, you don't see Oliver Stone, who I discovered. Oliver Stone, he doesn't blow his nose on TV, right? Martin Scorsese, Lloyd Kaufman, he blows his nose right on the big time podcast by James Mullinger.
Oliver Stone
Our
blew
plans.
Oliver Stone blew his nose a lot in the 80s to get all the coke out. But
He inhaled, though. It was more like did it the other way. Yeah, you're right. It was more of the other way. But he started with me.
that's
And
right.
many
Yeah.
people. I can go on forever. Samuel L. Jackson, Fergie, the late Paul Walker was in Monster in the Closet as one of the little kids. You can't imagine all the famous people that have been birthed by Tromaville. Our plans
Yeah.
for the future is that I've come across a wonderful director named Mercedes the Muse, and I produced her film called Divide and Conquer, which is finishing up. It's a feminist movie for the 21st century. Not exactly. It doesn't make me look too good in it, but people like me. But it's something for the fans. They'll get it, and it's terrific. She's very talented. Then we have, and of course, Brandon's movie. I'm hoping that we can get Slashing the Final Beginning into some theaters before we go to Blu-ray. And then what else? We got another movie I produced, Mutant Blast. Mutant Blast, which I only produced it. It's Fernando Ale directed. It's a Portuguese language movie, and the Portuguese government gave us doubled our budget, knowing it was a Troma movie.
Wow.
I defy the United States government to top that. They give us squat,
Yeah.
other than a lot of
Thank you,
taxes.
Portugal. Thank you, Portugal.
Yeah, Portugal. Not only that, but the Mutant Blast. This guy, Fernando Ale, will be up there with James Gunn. No question about it. He worked on Return to Nukem High and Return to Nukem High, which are now on Troma now.
Wow.
But he came over to the United States to work on Return to Nukem High on his own dime, paid his ticket, slept on the floor, learned how to defecate in a paper bag. And after that, sent a script over that he said was I would like, and I did. And I gave him a few notes, most of which he rejected, and we made the movie. And it's Mutant Blast. Try to check it out. It's on. It is on Troma now, and I think we're organizing the Blu-ray. Our problem again is we don't really have enough of this stuff. And by the way, I noticed that Disney laid off about 100,000 people, and so did most of the phone companies who own the movie studios. We paid everybody throughout all this, except for Michael Hers and Lloyd Kaufman. All our we have about 10 full-time employees, and they're all chained to radiators. But they've all been paid. We haven't put anybody on furlough or anything. So
That's amazing.
but nobody.
That's amazing. Kudos to you.
Yeah, you appreciate it, but you'd think, and you'd think New York City, where I've dwelled for 50 years. We own 2 buildings here. We pay our real estate taxes. We pay payroll taxes. We pay income taxes. I don't know. I've written 7 books, whatever. Nothing. The Museum of Moving Image, Museum of Modern Art have celebrated us, but nothing from New York Times, nothing from the local media, nothing. Not even the little shitty
No.
local Warner Brothers channel, New York One, it's called. Unless you're.
Well, that's why what we should bring. What we should bring back is, I think I have one here. I mean, I have thousands upon thousands of Troma collectibles, but I think it's time that we brought back the Troma Times, because this is where people get their media.
Well, I remember when Variety fired one of their longtime reporters, who I met back in the 70s, a great guy, because he gave a bad review to a Paramount movie. They fired him. Right. And I wrote a letter, open letter, saying, why don't Variety just become a house, just admit that they're a house organ like the Troma Times is for Troma. But no response, of course.
It's true.
And the only time,
over the years,
the only time my name has been in one of the trade magazines in the past 30 or 40 years is because of something bad. When I was chairman of the American Film, the International Film and Television Alliance, I was chairman, which runs the American Film Market, which is the trade association for the world film, at least for the American film industry, although about half the members are European and Asian. They did a series at a movie theater with a dozen, a monthly show or a weekly, maybe it was weekly, weekly screen. I can't remember. It was a screening of a great independent movie by an independent IFTA member. And they showed The Toxic Avenger. Deadline.com, that was the gist of the article. Conflict of interest, the conflict of interest. Lloyd Kaufman's movie, he's a chairman and they're showing his movie. That's the only time I've gotten any attention from them. Unless I shoot myself
crazy.
Yeah. Unless I blow my fucking brains
And
out,
heaven,
they will ignore us. We don't exist. It's like Russia. It's like Russia. They take away your passport, you don't exist. Except thanks to you and our
yeah.
fans, we do exist in the Troma
Well,
universe.
yeah, and when you exist in in people's hearts like mine, and as I say, I mean, back when we met in 1998, and this again, I've since that day, I've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So it feels like this is wonderful coming full circle. And I had these were the first 9 questions I ever wrote for anyone, and one of the questions I was asking was, of course, about Toxie 4, Newcomb High 4. But I was also asking about Sense and Sensibility, which hadn't. I don't believe it's happened. Is it time?
No,
Is it time for an English comedian and Troma fan to bring that project to fruition?
it was called Schlock and Schlockability: The
Right.
Revenge of Jane Austen. It's a great. James Gunn hired a very young, talented writer who was a writer slash mailman, and it needs a lot of work. But nobody, I couldn't, no, I couldn't get it going.
Oh.
We also wrote a western for a Japanese actor named Sekine, who's sort of the oh crap, the guy who has the talk shows, who's so funny, Jonathan in Britain. Jonathan,
Oh,
yeah, I used
Jonathan
to go on his
Ross.
show. Yeah, he had me on his show a
Jonathan
couple of
Ross.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a real lover
Yeah.
of cinema. So we
Yes.
wrote a western for Sekine-san, who doesn't speak English, and it was going to be during the times of building the transcontinental railroad in the United States. And now that we have all this Asian hate that's going on in our country, maybe it's a good time to bring that one back. But it's very hard to get anything going, and we needed help with those 2 projects because they were a little bigger than Sergeant Kabuki Man
Mm.
NYPD, which was our biggest project, and we did get help on that one from the guys from Namco, who created Pac-Man, and Namco is now owned by Bandai, so they
Right.
never heard of us.
Well, it's interesting because I mean that night that we met, I sorry, I'll go back. That night that we met, it was of course the premiere of Tromeo and Juliet. You and James Gunn have stayed friends. You of course made a cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy, which was again a joy to see you up on that big screen. Um,
Thank you.
how do you feel about seeing someone who you knew had that talent before anyone else did grow into being so kind of like globally well known?
It's terrific.
Mm.
It makes it all worthwhile, right? I mean, I don't enjoy these books and I don't make much money off them, but a lot of filmmakers have read them and been inspired by the fact, "Well, I can do this. Yeah, we can make our own damn movie. We can." And they forget, especially now with movies that you can make for. Oh, thank you. That's the novel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Oh,
novel
yes, the
that
novel, yes.
bankrupted. That bankrupted Avon Publishing. That was, I think, their last
Oh,
book.
did it? I do have the other book as well. Over there, the other half of this room
Well, don't
is
worry,
just
don't worry. But the
thousands of
point,
Troma. Yeah.
Michael Hers and I, once we got established, we really wanted to kind of raise the profile of the idea of do-it-yourself movies because
Mm.
we've never, all my life I've been against big business. And the way,
Mm.
and it's only getting worse. It gets worse, and now Biden, there might be a breath of air. They were thinking of getting rid of. They were thinking of getting rid of net neutrality on the internet, and they were actually Trump's gang was going to get rid of it. The free, open, and diverse internet, where you and Walt Disney and Troma all are have the same amount of power if we have something the public wants to see. They want to get rid of that
Right.
because of the obvious reasons. They want to be able the
Mm.
ISPs want to slow down your content and raise and speed the content of Universal Pictures, which they own, and
Mm.
Biden's not going to let
Yeah.
that happen, I don't think. So there may be a little air coming into the system. Who knows? But in any event, I think the
Definitely.
world. I think in my lifetime, born in 1945. I think I'm an optimist in a pessimistic world. I think I see the glass as half full, or maybe maybe 51% full, rather than a little more full than empty. So I think the world is a better place than it was. But in terms of the media, it's awful. We're not much different from Russia or China in terms of what the public is fed, and our schools suck. We've destroyed in my lifetime the American school system is absolute. Unless you're rich, you are not going to get a good. Well, you never say never, but very few people in this country get a good education, and we don't even have health care
Right.
except for old people. We're very
No.
happy to help the old people, right? Let the old people. Well, no, let me not say that. Uh, but the point is, the old people get the shots first. The old people get the health care. The old people, blah blah. What about all these young people who don't even? They can't even read and write. Half of them. It's awful, and half of them are obese. Think about the cost, and nobody
True.
does
It's
anything
true.
about it. Fast food, eat the chicken, eat the thing, eat this, eat that, eat the crap, eat the steroids, right? Frogs with three heads. They had a baby with three penises born the other day. Uh, I kind of like that idea. But, the point is, we're really,
There's a
the
movie
poor little,
idea.
well, Gerda, the little girl who's running around, who should get a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had about 10
Yeah.
minutes. We should all be worshiping her and backing her, and we ought to, Black Lives Matter, and we ought to have another 100,000 join them, because the children of the world.
Mm.
Oh my God, I've got two grand monsters, and I don't know what's going to happen. We have a house in Manhattan about a block from the river. When our kids inherit it, they'll have a nice swimming pool in the basement, a free swimming pool, maybe even a few fish. It's kind of
Well,
depressing. I think your company,
it is
your country
depressing.
is a lot. Your country is way advanced, I think, and I think it's got a lot more sensitivity to the human condition than does the
Mm.
United States of America. I'm sad to say.
Well, and I agree. And it has. I mean, I feel like Canada has more than England, and it's partly why I left England. Was England was becoming this kind of slightly kind of hate-filled place, and I wanted to come to a place that
Yeah,
has the optimism that you describe. And I
good,
can't thank
great.
you enough. I can't thank you enough for. Your services to filmmaking, to your services to children like myself that didn't have any. I had as a child. I had no friends. I wasn't academic. I wasn't athletic. I was just this kind of. I had nothing to live for, frankly. And then I discovered Troma movies, and it changed my life. And meeting you changed my life, and I can't thank you enough
Oh, well,
for
thank you. Well, thank
giving
you,
me
James.
everything. Lloyd, I
Oh,
salute you.
oh, well, that's very kind of you, and it really touches me. And you are not the first.
Mm.
When I was on my book tour for my first book, that's the only. Actually, a number of times I was on book tour, and some kid would stand up and say, Troma's War." I remember one kid in Troma's War saved my life. He
Mm.
said, "A kid and I, my friend and I, were being bullied at school. We saw Troma's War, and we it gave us the strength to keep going. And I will do anything for Troma." So
Mm.
later on,
Yeah.
if you see Citizen Toxie, there's a scene in the Playboy magazine in whatever that guy who ran Playboy in his grotto,
Yeah.
and the kid is
Yeah.
it's one of the very first penises shown on screen in an American movie, and that very suicidal
Wow.
boy did that, and it meant so much to him.
Hmm.
Any young men who want to show me their penises, bring it. Oh no, don't say that. I'll get canceled once again. That happened to James. Oh, no, no, don't. Yeah, you get into serious trouble. But the point
Yeah.
is, it's a family. The Troma thing is a family. As I say,
Yeah.
we have a small cult following, but they call me Uncle Lloydie, which I prefer because
Yeah.
basically I'm grandfather Lloydie. But don't tell anyone.
Well, thank you. Keep doing what you do, Lloyd, and keep inspiring us. And the second I'm allowed to get on a plane, I will be in New York on the set of a Troma film, hopefully flashing my penis, because it would mean a lot to me.
Well, I need a one of a kind script. Thank you, and you are a great psychiatrist. I feel so much better. And let's if there were more. I'm sorry to end this, but let's do it again. Let's do it this next time. I'll interview you because I would love to know your childhood and did you read books and did they take you to the theater and all that kind of stuff. So
Wonderful.
let's continue. Let's continue.